glad that you're joining us today for Church Anywhere. We have a great service lined up for you. We have some great music and a great message that's coming your way. Please remember to comment to us in the box alongside of this if you have some questions or prayer requests or anything that you want us to know. This would be a great opportunity for you to go to your kitchen and find some items for communion, because we're going to share in that in a little bit of time. So go to your refrigerator, cupboard, whatever, find a piece of bread, some crackers, chips, find a cup of juice or whatever you need in order for us to take communion together. We're excited about you joining us. We hope it's an encouraging message for you. We hope it's something that challenges you. Church Anywhere starts right now.
Hey everyone, welcome to Church Anywhere. We're so glad you're with us today. Wherever you're watching us from, comment below where you're watching us from. We're glad that you're here. We're going to sing together. Here we go. It wasn't for nothing that you shed your blood. So I'm gonna live like my shame is gone, yeah. Won't be shackled to the way I was. I'm gonna live like my chains are gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. Praise is a weapon. Praise is a weapon that will overcome. And I'm gonna shout like the battle's won, yeah. And fall back, devil, 'cause your time is up. I'm gonna live like the zone is gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. How great the power, come on. How great the power of the blood. Whoa, whoa, I am, and I am the righteousness of God. Yeah. Whoa, whoa, how great power of the blood. Whoa, whoa, and I am the righteousness of God. Whoa, whoa, yeah. Whoa, sing gone, gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Yes, Lord, come on. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. Oh, sing gone, gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. Whoa, 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 yeah, come on. Whoa,
I was FaceTiming with my grandkids the other day, and I remember thinking, I can see some of their mama and some of their dad in them. Oh, not just in their appearance, but also in their personality and in character. I can see a sweetness, a generosity, compassion, and yes, there's a little orneriness in there. It's pretty easy to say that I can see your mama in you, or I can see your father in you. You know, each of us are made in the image of our Father, God. That doesn't mean that we look like him, but it does mean that we all have characteristics of God in us. One of those characteristics is a desire to be generous. Our Father is a God who gives. He's a giver. He's generous. It's just who he is. I want to thank you for your continued generosity to First Capital Christian Church and to Church Anywhere. Your gifts make ministry to the people of Harrison County and beyond possible. You can give through our app or our website, through the mail, or you could drop it off at the church building. Our desire should be to have people see God and his generosity when they see us.
We want to teach you guys a new song today. It's called My Testimony. Comment below a sentence that describes your testimony before Christ and now after Christ. Let's go. Here we go. I saw Satan fall like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover. But the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. Yeah. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. My praise belongs to you forever. Let's sing. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, and I'll testify. By Jesus lived righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son and Father. Our God will finish what he started. Yeah, our God will finish what he started. This is my testimony from death to life. Grace rewrote my story, and I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Then you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. Yeah. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. Now testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony.
Martha Stewart was one of my favorites. No, not that Martha Stewart, not the one from the TV show. My Martha Stewart was a Jesus follower from my hometown. She was like a mama to me, as well as dozens and dozens of other 20-somethings. She always had an open door to her home and to her refrigerator, where she had sweet tea and chocolate chip cookies, and it was wonderful. Martha also took more pictures of their guests than any photographer would even consider taking. She had dozens of photo albums, the old-time photo albums where you sat down with a book and you flipped through the pages to see all the pictures. Spending time in those photo albums helped me remember good times, good people, good memories. When you hear stories about Jesus, when you read stories about Jesus, you are creating these same kind of mental pictures or memories in your mind of who Jesus is, things that he said, things that he did. So I want you to open your photo album right now. Here's the picture. Whether that's a new picture or one you've seen before, it's Jesus, seated at a table, reclining at a table, disciples all around him. The meal is over, everyone's talking, and Jesus picks up some bread and tells his disciples that it represents his body. Then he picks up a cup that represents his blood. And he says, remember what I've done. Remember me. Flip through your Jesus picture album in your mind. Visualize the picture of Jesus being baptized. Do you see it? Jesus healing a blind man or a sick woman. Jesus loving the poor or the marginalized. Jesus dying on a cross. Jesus walking out of the tomb. Take a few moments as you take your communion, your bread and your juice, and remember.
What scares you? If you immediately say, I ain't afraid of nothing, then you've said that you're afraid someone might believe that you aren't afraid, because we're all afraid of something. To be afraid is not a bad thing. Fear is a warning system that's built into us to keep us out of harm's way. Just know that it's like anything else that God wired into us. It's a good thing, but it can become a bad thing. When fear consumes us, when it paralyzes us, when it becomes irrational or delusional, when it causes us to say or do stupid stuff, fear becomes what it was never intended to be. So what scares you? And the answer comes in all sizes. I asked some of the staff what scared them. First answer was spiders and snakes and any kind of creepy critter. The second answer was my driving. Some on the staff have that on their list. Now, I may drive a little too fast for some and a little too reckless for others, but it rarely scares me, and I'm the one in the car all the time. What scares you? Headlines? COVID-19? Some of you say, nah. Others are genuinely worried. Mobs or protesters? Civil unrest? What's next? Some think it's not my problem, and others are afraid of it, afraid that it'll mess up their lives. Some are really afraid for their lives. The economy? What's going to happen to my retirement? What scares you? When the phone rings in the middle of the night, being tested for cancer, the thought of losing a loved one, dying? Maybe a better question than what scares you is what causes fear. Listen and process this idea from Andy Stanley. Fear is a byproduct of our ability to accumulate knowledge and to project it into the future. It's a byproduct of something that we wouldn't want to give up. And that's our ability to accumulate knowledge and project it into the future. This is one of the greatest gifts God has given us. It sets us apart. It makes us makes us human. Our ability to collect information and pass it along from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. The result of that, we're able to make progress. We build on what our ancestors learned and passed along to us. What a gift. Our ancestors did it, and we can do it too. We can take what we know and we can play it forward. We imagine. We play what if. It's the ability that creates hopes and dreams. It's the formula that gives birth to I can't wait. None of us would want to sacrifice that if that's what it took to get rid of our fears. And yet that very same capacity has the potential to create fears. What if can birth our dreams, but it also can feed our fears. And it can turn us and take us to bad places. A plane crashes and we say, could that happen to me? Yeah, it could. For some, it's just a possibility. And for others, it turns into a life-changing phobia. Fear is not a bad thing. Fear has a place so long as you don't let it control us. We started with what scares you, and then we looked at the cause, the why. But the question that helps us the most is how to overcome my fears. So let me share with you some simple practical tools that I found helpful as I've learned to overcome my fears. The first one doesn't apply to any and every fear, but it helps with a whole bunch. It's exposure. So many fears are rooted in one fear, the fear of the unknown. For example, we're afraid of what might be lurking in the dark. I don't know who or what might be hiding there. I don't know what I might bump into or trip over or fall into. My what if part of my brain starts to work overtime, and my imagination takes me to some bad places. The solution? Well, turn on the light. And we see there was nothing there to be afraid of. The fears disappear. Exposure removed the fear. The same thing's true in all kinds of circumstances. There are foods that you don't like. At least you think you don't like them. Truth is, you don't know, you've never tried them. Why? Because you're afraid. So someone convinces you to try it. And you realize it's not so bad. In fact, it's pretty good. You didn't like it because you were afraid you wouldn't like it. Exposure can change that for you. Most Caucasians are afraid of black men. It's a fact. So how do you defeat that fear? Well, you find a black man and become friends. You get to know them. You get to spend time together. The more time you spend with them, the less fearful they are. Many fears can be removed simply by exposure. Now, the second tool that removes fear is experience. There is something to fear, and yet I've been there before, and I know it's not as bad as I thought. Riding a roller coaster can be a terrifying experience, but the 20th time on the same roller coaster is not nearly as bad as the first time. Public speaking can be high on a lot of people's greatest fears. The only way to remove it is to do it, and then do it again, and do it again, and do it again. It may never get easy, but it can become manageable. And here's another tool that removes fear: preparation. It's when we know things will scare us that are laying out there ahead of us. We get ourselves ready in advance. Navy SEALs go through intensive training, pushing the limits physically and mentally, rehearsing skills endlessly, learning tactics and strategy. They know that they're going to be placed in scary situations, but the preparation develops habits and muscle memory that enables them to cope with the stresses and maximizes their chance of survival. Or let's go here. When you learn how to recognize snakes, you know which ones can hurt you and which ones can't. Now, I know some of you agree with my mom. She believed the only good snake came in pieces chopped up with a garden hoe. But all snakes aren't dangerous. Knowledge is preparation, and it can eliminate or at least make some of our fears manageable. When you're in the regional final and you're down 10 with 10 minutes to go, it can be scary to think that it could all be over. But then you call a timeout and you remember the times you've been down before. And you remember the times when you climb back. You remind your team of the opponents that you've beaten that are better than the one you're playing right now. Perspective changes fear with hope and confidence because we've been there before, we came through, and we'll do it again. One of the big themes in Jesus' ministry was helping his disciples learn how to manage their fears. Read through the stories of Jesus and look for the number of times he said, "Fear not," or "Don't be afraid." He thought that it was an important skill for us to master. And he highlights a particular tool that I've not mentioned yet, but we're going to discover today. The story comes right on the heels of another miracle. Donnie's going to talk about it next week. It's the feeding of the 5,000. I'm going to begin where that one ends. It's the end of a long, hard day, and Jesus has been teaching a huge crowd of people. It's getting late, they're getting hungry, and they're a long way from the closest McDonald's, so Jesus makes sure that they all get a good meal before they head home. Now let's pick up the story here in Mark 6:45. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. Maybe he thought if the crowd sees these guys leaving, they'll take the hint and they'll go home. You guys go ahead and I'll meet you over there. Or maybe the disciples wanted to stay and help him manage the crowd because the crowd was getting rowdy. It's true. They were starting to believe that Jesus was king. Maybe the disciples thought that they ought to stay and help him manage that. Jesus says, no, you guys, I can handle this. You see, what I want you to notice is the verb here, made. It says Jesus made his disciples get in the boat. It's a strong word. He didn't ask them. He didn't invite them into the boat. He forced them. He compelled them. He demanded they get in the boat and go to the other side. Was he just getting tired and grouchy? Were they dilly-dallying around and he was fed up with it? Or was there some of them that didn't want to get in the boat? Maybe it's because they remembered the last time that they were in a boat on Galilee. Do you remember it? It's back a few chapters, Mark chapter 4. Circumstances were similar. Jesus was tired. Mark notes that Jesus brought his pillow. You don't usually see pillows in fishing boats. Mark also notes that there were other boats. Anyway, they were rowing across the lake. It's several miles across, and Jesus has got his pillow, and he's asleep when a furious storm hit. The wind is blowing and the growing whitecaps, and it's beyond choppy. It's getting dangerous. And now angry waves have swept over the sides, and they're afraid that they're going to get swamped. Most, if not all of these guys could swim. Several were professional fishermen, but they were too far from shore, and the water was too rough. None of them could make it. So they all thought the same thing, and then finally somebody said it. We're going to die out here. I've always wondered about this next part. It says Jesus was asleep. I get that he was tired, exhausted. He had a pillow. Either he thought to bring it or one of the guys brought a pillow for him. But I don't doubt that he was asleep at first. But in an open boat, how bad does a storm have to get before it wakes you up, even if you're exhausted? I mean, is it when the wind picks up and the boat begins to rock? Is it when the water gets choppy and you begin to bounce? Or is it when the rain hits your face or the waves come up over the side and drop bucketful of cold water on your face? Makes me wonder if Jesus had been asleep, realized what was going on, and then kind of played it out. You know, you dads know what I mean. You're laying on the couch and your kids think that dad's asleep, but you really aren't. And you were, but now you're not. And I wonder if he was waiting to see how they'd handle things. Mark 4:38 says, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got his answer. Panic, that's how they responded. And he turned and he spoke to nature. And to the wind he said, "Peace." And to the waves he said, "Be still." And just like Dad was acting like he was asleep on the couch, he turns to his misbehaving children and he calls them down. Jesus calls down nature and it was completely calm. And then he said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Why do you still have no faith?" Is he mocking them? Is he saying, "You bunch of scaredy cats"? Or is he saying, some things are scary? You should be afraid because there's something to be afraid of, but you still don't get it, do you? You still haven't figured it out. But they were on their way. I love the way that Mark sums it up. Mark says they feared a great fear. Before they were afraid they were going to die. They were afraid they were going to drown. But now, well, that fear was nothing compared to now. Now they're terrified. Now they realize they're in the presence of someone who is way bigger than anything that had ever scared them before. And now they're more afraid of Jesus than they were of dying. The lesson Jesus taught them that day was often that we're afraid of the wrong thing. Exposure, experience, preparation. The disciples were getting exposed. They were gaining experience. But Jesus still had some preparing to do. A few weeks after the storm, a few weeks before the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus was prepping the guys to go on a practice run. He was pairing them up to go out preaching. And so he tells them what to say. The kingdom of heaven is near. And he tells them what to do. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, drive out demons, just the usual stuff. Right? Can you imagine? This is crazy. Can you imagine what that would be like? Then he tells them what not to take. Don't take any money. Don't take any clothes. No extras. Oh, yeah, there's one more thing. People are going to hate you because of me. And then he says this. This is important. Write this down. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. It sounds to me like he said, don't be afraid of lesser things when something greater is right in front of you. Exposure, experience, preparation. That leads us back to where we were earlier, Mark 6:45. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he stayed behind to dismiss the crowd. Same guys, same boat, same lake. I wonder if Jesus knew the weather report. Was this intentional? If so, why? What's Jesus trying to get across here? They set out late afternoon, early evening. It's about a 5 or 6 mile row across the lake. A good distance, but not an impossible distance, especially if they can catch a little wind to push them along. Meanwhile, Jesus had dismissed the crowds and he'd gone up on the hillside to pray. It's all good. But the wind was against them. They were rowing into a headwind. They weren't making any headway. In fact, fast forward, it's nearly dawn. It's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and they've just halfway across the lake. They're tired, they're sleepy, they've got blistered hands, they're frustrated, and a long way from finished. Sometimes when we're simply trying to do what Jesus tells us to do, life works against us. I was just trying to obey. I was just trying to do my best to follow Jesus, and I feel like I'm rowing into a headwind. Have you ever felt that way? I mean, it's darker than dark, and things just keep fighting against you, and anything you try gets worse, and the harder you try, the fewer the results, and trying harder isn't working. And oh yeah, Jesus isn't in the boat with you this time. This time you're on your own. At least that's how it feels. And the bills keep coming, and the kids keep acting out. They're getting worse. Your boss is relentless, and you're at the end of your rope. Here he comes. Just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, you know how to finish the sentence. Been there, done that. Here comes something you didn't see coming. Here comes something for which you weren't prepared. In fact, there's no way to be prepared for what's coming next. It's a ghost. That's right. They saw a ghost. This is one of the most compelling reasons that I believe the Bible is true. Through centuries, when people write themselves into a story, the tendency is always to make themselves look better than they really are. They clean up the details and omit their transgressions. The natural inclination is to make ourselves look good, and yet when we read through the gospel accounts, the disciples' faults and weaknesses are on display for all to see. They include those embarrassing details of their failures and their weaknesses. Their transparency is compelling. Now, in those days, many people believed that evil lived under the sea. And now here they are out in the middle of the water in rough waters, and they see this being coming toward them, walking on top of the water. What do you think it was? Well, you're afraid because there was something to be afraid of. It'd be stupid not to be afraid. If you are in a stressful situation and you suddenly experience something inexplicable, something more than unusual, something that might threaten you, fear's the natural reaction. What I'm saying is nobody's thinking that this is Casper the Friendly Ghost. They are petrified. They are horrified. They are, I am going to die terrified. Then Jesus calls out, don't be afraid. It's me. Now, the Bible doesn't say it, but I think it's a good thing Jesus wasn't any closer at that time because one of the guys would have smacked him. When I went to college with a guy named George Elder. Great name for a church leader. Anyway, George was a gentle giant, very large man, but George was a little jumpy, and from time to time, we might have hid and scared George. The dorms that were set up with couches that turned into beds. You pulled the bottom of the couch out, and that's where you turned into your mattress. Well, one night, Larry slipped in behind that and got in behind his mattress, and George got ready for bed, and he laid down on his bed, and he rolled over, and Larry spoke. And George got up and just started beating him with that mattress. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, it was great. We were all in the room watching, and George didn't even know it. It's like when Marianne and I were first married. I was out of town playing basketball. She was at home alone, watching a horror movie after midnight. I came up the stairs to the apartment. The door was locked. As I tried to open it, she met me at the door with a butcher knife. It went from one of us being scared to two of us being scared, just like that. When the disciples had a moment to process what had happened, they said, wait a minute, what's going on? You mean to tell us you weren't with us, but you were watching us? Exactly. You knew all along what we were going through? Yes. One day I won't be with you, but I'll be there. Don't be afraid, even when there's something to be afraid of. Why would Jesus do that to us? When we're afraid, why would he do that? Why would he lead us there? Because there's something bigger than our fears. It's perspective. Perspective changes things. Jesus was teaching his disciples how to manage fear. They'd failed in the storm, so he tried again. Get back in the boat. They failed again. And they failed in the garden the night that he was arrested. And Peter failed in the courtyard later that night. They failed as they feared and hid behind locked doors while he lay in the tomb. You know what changed things for them? Do you know when they finally realized that fears could be managed? It's when they were eating supper with a man who had died. Now, you would think that's what would have caused the fear. But that gave them boldness. One meal with a resurrected Savior changed their perspective on fear. Fear not changed the world. Fear not changed them. Nearly 150 years later, Marcus Aurelius was the emperor and Christian persecution was at its peak. Regularly, Christians were being taken into the arenas to be killed by gladiators or soldiers with chariots or wild animals. Now, a man named Claudius Gallus was a doctor during those days, and it was illegal to perform autopsies. Once a person was dead, doctors were to leave the body alone. So in order to learn more about how to save lives, Gallienus would go to the arenas and inspect the bodies that were left for dead but had not yet died. So he had been in the arena a lot of times. He had seen a lot of Christians die. And then he would rush in as they were drawing their final breaths. As he reflected on that, he wrote, "For fearlessness of death and the hereafter is something we witness in them every day." These men and women did not fear those who could kill the body. They feared the one who could destroy both the body and the soul in hell, and it emboldened them, and they changed the world. Fear not can change the world. Fear not will change you, and you will change the world that we live in right now. Now, maybe today you came into this with a lot of fear. Well, I just want to tell you, Jesus will not say those fears aren't real, but he will help you understand how to manage those things you're afraid of. Let's pray. Father in heaven, I thank you for loving us. I thank you for what you provide for us. I thank you for the gift of our being able to accumulate knowledge and project it into the future. It creates hope. But hope turned upside down is fear. Father, help us today to manage our fears by leaning on what we have through Jesus Christ. It's in his name.
Come down from the water, the great unknown, a sea may fail, never find you in the mystery, when oceans heave, my faith will stand.
Thanks for joining us today. We're happy that you're with us. Just want to remind you that Church Anywhere is more than just a 1-hour worship service. We are here to help you and connect with you during the rest of the week also. Check out a couple of new things from Church Anywhere. We have Jesus Anywhere. It's a daily tip or suggestion or thought to help you follow Jesus better each day. And we've started Parenting Anywhere, a resource to help you to be a better parent each day and follow Jesus better because of that. Hey, if you have any questions about what you've heard today, or what your next step might be, or if you need us to pray with you or for you, please message us. We'll get back to you just as quickly as we can.
I saw Satan fall like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover. But the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. Yeah. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. My praise belongs to you forever. Let's sing. This is my testimony from death to life, 'cause grace rewrote my story, and I'll testify. By Jesus the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Come together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son and Father. Our God will finish what he started. Yeah, our God will finish what he started. This is my testimony from death to life, 'cause grace rewrote my story, and I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. You're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. Yeah. This is my testimony from death to life, 'cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify.